So imagine you're a father and your son goes missing on his wedding day. The wedding went so well. Why would he just up and run off? Obviously, he'd be pretty torn up and want to find him. Was he kidnapped maybe? He must have been. Why else would he just disappear like this? So you do what anybody would do and you assemble a search party. And you look everywhere for him. And while searching, you see all kinds of people, but nobody like your son. Feeling defeated, you'd probably just start to head home. And on the way, you pass by a beggar and you haven't had a good day, but you can at least brighten his day, so you toss him some money. 17 years later, someone in need shows up at your door, asking for a place to stay. You give them a small room and help them get comfortable. And then this person lives with you for another 17 years until they pass away, always minding their own business and staying busy praying. But after they pass away, you realize that they left a note behind, and you read it, and you can't believe what you're reading because the note says who that person was all along. Howdy, y'all, and welcome back to another episode of the Sanctified Podcast, the show where we explore the stories of various saints throughout history and learn about what they did and how we came to recognize them as saints today. And today, we're going to explore the life of Saint Alexius, also known as Saint Alexis. He gave up on a luxurious life for asceticism and returned home unrecognizable. Alexius was born in Rome around the 4th century, and his parents, Euphemianus and Aglaeus, were very devout. They were known to regularly set extra tables, not just seats, but full tables for those in need to just come in and have a meal. And they might have even been members of the Roman Senate, but that's not a for certain fact, and I'll get back to that later on. But his parents' devotion inspired Alexius, and he too was a very devout and faithful child. By the time he was just 6 years old, he was already demonstrating a very high intellectual ability. He was able to read and was already studying science, which at this time would have been heavily leaning towards theology, astronomy, fundamental math, nothing too complicated, and just an overall understanding of nature, which I guess if you think about it, is not tremendously different from science now, but the foundations and the core of it certainly are. But even more than studying science, Alexius could not stop reading scripture. He was fascinated by it, and he took every opportunity that he could to read more. Soon enough, he began to practice his faith just like his parents did, fasting, giving to the poor, and he even started to wear a coarse shirt underneath his fine clothes as a way to avoid indulging in life's luxuries. But secretly, he kind of just wanted to leave all his worldly possessions and problems behind and focus solely on serving God. But his parents had different plans for him. They had arranged for him to marry a very beautiful and very admired woman. Any other man would have been ecstatic to marry her, but Alexius was not like other men. On his wedding day, he asked for permission to leave so that he could go and serve the Lord, and he was granted it. He left his bride his most valuable possession, saying, "Keep these things, beloved, and may the Lord be with us until his grace provides us with something better." And with that, he set out, leaving his home behind. He boarded a ship and he sailed to Mesopotamia. Alexius landed in Edessa, probably chosen as his destination because it was where the icon of the Lord, not made by hands, was kept, which actually has a pretty cool story. I don't want to go too in depth, but basically Jesus asked for a towel, wiped his face with it, and his image was imprinted into the towel, and this towel held healing powers for the people of the land. There's a lot more to this story, but again, that's for another time. Right now, we're going to focus on Alexius. So when he arrived in Edessa, he sold everything he had, and he shared what he earned from that with the poor in the city. He made his home in the streets near the Church of the Most Holy Theotokos, which is the Eastern Orthodox word for the Virgin Mary. And from whatever money he was given each day, he would buy the bare minimum so that he could stay alive. But then anything in excess, he'd just give away to others in need. Like, could you imagine being a beggar? You're given $100 and you're like, I'm going to go buy a $5 value meal and then give $95 away to somebody else who needs it. Like, I don't know many who would do that. if I was in his position, I doubt I would, to be honest. I'd probably take it and save it, but he was just such a generous and caring person. This is just how Alexius operated. Now remember, Alexius' parents weren't aware of his plan, only his wife. And though she didn't oppose his plan, she wasn't necessarily a fan of it either. Together, Alexius' parents and his wife sent out a search party for him. They knew his destination, but that was all, really. When the group arrived, they looked everywhere for him. But they were looking for the Alexius that they knew, a healthy young man wearing very fine clothes. And kind of ironically, when they went past the very church Alexius was sitting by, they gave the poor, emaciated beggar some money, not realizing just who it was. Alexius recognized them, but he didn't have a reason to identify himself. He knew that they came to bring him home. So if he was like, "Oh, hey guys, it's me," they'd just tell him to come with, or they'd drag him along. That's not what he wanted. So, unable to find who they came for, the group returned to their home. Alexius' mother was inconsolable, thinking that she lost her son forever. And, I can't blame her. His wife was also very disappointed in their fruitless search. But you know what they say, if you love something, you gotta let it be free. Just because she didn't oppose Alexius' decision to just leave and let him go, doesn't mean that she liked the idea either. She was still sad that her new husband left to follow a new path. Alexius would spend the next 17 years in Edessa, and then something miraculous happened. An icon of the Virgin Mary spoke to the head priest and said, "Lead into my church that man of God, worthy of the kingdom of heaven. His prayer rises up to God like a fragrant incense, and the Holy Spirit rests upon him." But the priest had no clue who this mysterious man was, so he prayed for an answer. And he was answered with, "The man of God is the beggar who sits in the portico." So the priest went right on out, and he found Alexius sitting in the portico, as he was wont to do. He kind of hung out there all day, every day. Many people in the church began to look to him for guidance because of this miracle word from Mary. Alexius didn't really like all this attention. It's not what he went out to get. And he decided that it was time to go. And he decided that he would go visit the Church of St. Paul in Tarsus. So he boarded a ship bound for Cilicia. Before he could arrive, though, a heavy storm, perhaps sent by God, diverted the ship, and it landed in Italy, not too far from Rome. So, possibly taking it as a sign, Alexius went to his old home, looking for a place to stay. Not as Alexius, the member of the family, but as a person in need, a total stranger who just needed some help. And again, he wasn't recognized as he approached his parents' home. He asked his father for a place to stay in their spacious courtyard, and his father offered a small cell for him underneath their steps, and he offered food from his own table, because that's just, again, what they did. Remember, they were very devout, and they would help total strangers, so it makes sense they would help their son, not realizing who he was. To them, he was just a stranger, but again, that's what they did. As he stayed at his parents' home, he spent the days and nights praying and fasting. The servants actually would insult the poor stranger, and he would just kind of take the verbal blows and keep on going. Also, his cell just so happened to be next to his wife's room, and when he heard her crying because she missed her husband, or praying for his return, he really felt a deep pain, but inside he just knew it wasn't the time to reveal himself. He spent another 17 years as a pauper in his parents' courtyard under those stairs, and then the Lord revealed to him the day that he would die. In preparation for this event, he wrote a letter that would explain everything to his parents and to his wife. He asked them to forgive him for the pain that he caused and understand why he did what he did. When he died in 411 or 412, Archbishop Innocent was conducting Mass, and Emperor Honorius was even present. And during the service, a voice was heard coming from the altar, and it said, "Come unto me, all ye who labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest." The people attending Mass kind of freaked out. Like, it would be pretty startling for this to happen just on a totally random day. The voice went on. "On Friday morning, the man of God comes forth from the body. Have him pray for the city, that you may remain untroubled." Those in attendance spread the word, and everyone searched for the man that the voice was talking about. But it was no use. They couldn't figure out who this mysterious person was. Just like it happened in Edessa, people were confused for a while. The Pope asked for guidance from God, and the voice came again. This time it said, "Seek the man of God in the house of Ephimenius." Obviously, having this new lead, everybody rushed there to find him. But he was already gone. Lying on his back, his face shone brightly, and in his hands was the letter that he wrote. The people moved his body to a cot and covered it with very expensive cloth. And the Pope and Emperor kneeled beside Alexius and asked him to release the paper while they prayed. His hands loosened, and they pulled what he held. When the letter was read, his parents and wife shed tears of joy and pain. Their beloved Alexius had been with them for so long, and they didn't know it. He was taken care of, but he just didn't want that lavish lifestyle, even though his family could afford it, and it wouldn't have been very hard to just be like, oh, hey, Dad, by the way, I'm your son. Can I come back? Like, there's the story in the Bible of that happening, but just Alexius wanted the ascetic lifestyle. He didn't want the way that his family had lived. His body was placed in the center of the city for all to see and visit for 1 week, and then it was moved to the church and into a tomb made of marble. And a fragrant odor was said to have come from his body, and those who were sick who came to pay him a visit were miraculously healed. Now, there are a couple of sources for Alexius, and that's where the uncertainty about his parents being Roman senatorial class comes in. One version says that he was just a random dude from Edessa who ended up going to Rome and dying there. In this case, his parents would just kind of be a mystery. We wouldn't know who they are. The other version is the one I shared. It seems to be a little more widely accepted, that he was from Rome and that he gave up everything he had for his faith and then later returned to Rome. Whichever the true story is, he is still accepted as a saint either way. And it is interesting to note, though, that for the Roman Catholic Church, his feast day was removed from the calendar in 1969 because of this sort of hazy understanding of his origins. It used to be July 17th, but they didn't remove his saint status. He's still a saint according to that church. But the Orthodox Catholic Church still celebrates his feast day on March 17th. And he's still the patron saint of the Congregation of the Sacred Hearts of Jesus and Mary. He's also the patron saint for beggars, porters, nurses, pilgrims, and belt makers. Only his feast day was affected by rumors. No other changes were made in recognizing or celebrating his life. And just in case you're a little curious, his existence is doubted because the first records of his life come from a few centuries after his death in the 800s versus when he died around the 500s, 400s. But that is just the first reference that we've discovered yet. It seems as though he was already very well known and had a well-established existence before then, because many people knew of him and there were images in his likeness created. It's not just like, oh, there's a couple here, a couple there, and it built up. There's a lot from the one time period. So personally, I see no fair reason to doubt his existence, but I'll leave it for you to decide. And something that I think is pretty cool is that the very stairs he lived under for the last 17 years of his life are actually held as a relic in the church of Saint Alexius and Saint Boniface, which is actually his home converted to a church after his death by his father's doing. If you have any questions, please let me know, and I'll do my best to answer them. So, what do you think of Saint Alexius? Do you think that you could leave everything behind on your wedding night like he did? I probably couldn't. Oh, I probably couldn't. I definitely couldn't. And I hope that you found his story interesting. I look forward to learning your thoughts of Saint Alexius. Thanks for listening. If you would like to support the channel, you can subscribe, download the episode, comment, share it with your friends, or send me a suggestion on a saint to check out by emailing me at sanctifiedpodcast@proton.me. You can find the show on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Music, Amazon Music, Podbean, and more. Just search for the Sanctified Podcast, and I should have a few episodes uploaded. Take care, and have a wonderful day.